Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. This is Vyakhya from Career 360. If you are a CAT 2024 aspirant, then I'm sure the word JOCA is familiar to you. IIM Calcutta is one of the most premier institute of the country. It's one of the most oldest B school. Today we have Vaibhav with us, who is currently in his first year of PGP program at IIM Calcutta. He's here to share his journey with us. Welcome Vaibhav. How are you doing?
I'm good, Vakya. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll ask the most generic question. Tell us more about yourself and a little bit about your profile and why you decided to pursue MBA.
Right. So at heart, I'm a mechanical engineer. I've completed my engineering in the year 2022, and from the very get-go, I realized that in order for me to hack it in the corporate world, I need a little bit more than just a degree in mechanical engineering. What appealed to me initially was understanding business aspects, which is why my family also pushed me towards pursuing an MBA. So before I knew I was going to do engineering, I knew that MBA is something that has to be done. So I completely geared myself towards that. I was mentally prepared beforehand. So I finished my engineering in from Manipal in 2022. Decided to give CAT that year. Um, Things didn't go my way that year. Took up a job and then reappeared next year, which is then how I converted the calls that I received then.
Okay, that's great. So what other exams did you give apart from CAT?
Right. So in 2022 itself, I decided to hedge my risk a bit. I gave GMAT. B schools like ISB and SP Gen accept GMAT as a valid score. So I wrote GMAT. I also kept the option of going abroad for an MBA open through that gateway. And I also gave ZAT, which is for Xavier's.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So what were your scores in GMAT and ZAT?
Right. So in GMAT I scored I think 730,
Yeah.
730 or 740. I'm not too sure. It was around 97 percentile. And ZAT was around 98.6 percentile.
Okay, that's great.
CAT 22 I scored 99.75 percentile.
Oh, that's great. So, since you scored so well in GMAT, what was your
Yeah.
preparation strategy for GMAT and how was it different from CAT?
Right. So GMAT comes with two sections. One is your verbal ability, and the other is hardcore maths. Why
Hmm.
I say maths is because there's a lot more interpretation in in that maths than what is required in Indian exams. So questions in the mathematics section won't be just algebra. It'll be algebra and then what you make of the thing. So there are about five options, and it gets tends to get a little confusing. So that way the maths is a little bit different. Of course, fundamentals remain the same, but you have to be a little more intuitive in your thinking when you're answering those mathematical questions. If I was to contrast the verbal section also with what is required in CAT, it's starkly different. There's a heavy emphasis on grammar in GMAT, which is something which is almost absent in CAT. So the way I prepared for it is I've always read my entire life, so I have a strong footholding with English in general.
Okay.
So I didn't study much for it. I think I went through this website called GMAT Club for the 2 weeks prior to my exam,
Okay.
and I just brushed up a few questions and understood how the questions flow, and I think that sufficed for me.
Okay.
But yeah, GMAT is an exam which is very sensitive to your inputs. So the next question will be decided how you scored in the previous question. So it would be unfair for me to recommend any one set path for how to attempt a question or how to go about a paper. It's very individualistic in that sense. Something which is a little different from a CAT exam.
Okay. So did you had any attempt strategy, like any specific strategy that you had for GMAT since you scored so well in that?
Not so much an attempt strategy, but it's beneficial to answer all questions in GMAT. Otherwise, you attract a negative score.
Okay.
So you have to pace yourself. And I mean, if you're fast at maths, then the mathematics section wouldn't be a problem. English questions, of course, there's reading comprehension as well, which do get arduous at times. So you have to get into the habit of reading a little bit more. And I would say the level of the reading comprehension is one notch higher than what we expect in CAT and ZAT. So one should prepare and know what's coming your way. But other than that, yeah, I think time would be a major thing. And knowing that you have to answer all questions is something that some aspirants forget on. So then that's a major penalty. So that's something you can't afford while writing the GMAT.
Sure. Okay, let's talk about your CAT preparation journey. So when did you
Right.
started preparing for CAT?
So I think I initially attempted CAT 21, which
Okay.
was in my final year of college.
Okay.
I started preparation around August of that year. There's a reason I started that late. I'd given a few mocks and I was confident in my ability to crack CAT.
Okay.
At that time, I think I'd enrolled with Career Launcher with their
Okay.
night classes program.
Okay.
What that did for me was it brushed up my fundamentals. I got to know what I should expect.
Okay.
And I also got in the habit of taking mocks, which is, I think, imperative. Um, However, I think at that time, in those 3 or 4 months that I prepared for CAT 21, I hadn't understood what is required from me on the day of the exam. So, what I mean by that is, even though I scored well in the mocks, I hadn't built that EQ that
Okay.
is required for an exam day strategy, right? So, from that attempt, I realized that your effort in the 4 months, 6 months, how much ever you give it, might not culminate into a good positive result on the D day. So, and for that, what is very important is to make an exam day strategy, like you had mentioned earlier. However, so I scored, I think, barely a 90 percentile. I completely froze on the D day. I performed horribly in all the three sections.
Okay.
What that set me was extreme disappointment at that time. 2 months later, I realized that I need to rethink what's going on. However, that at that time, what I decided was to not focus on CAT. I decided to pick up a job. I played with the idea of going abroad as well.
Okay.
So I was definitely not studying for CAT 22, right? It was completely at the back of my head. I just still filled up the form thinking that this is something I don't want to forget. 2 years down the line, I do want to write CAT again, maybe after picking up 2 years of work X. So my idea of filling up the CAT 22 form was to stay in touch with this exam, right? So at that time, I had not given any mocks. I had not prepared at all. I just went ahead and wrote CAT 22. I got a slot. I think I got slot 2. I went ahead, wrote it. Thankfully, all my learnings from my past preparation translated into a good result. But what that taught me was, because I didn't have that pressure on my head of performing well, I was able to give my best shot at it. And I was the best version of myself on that day.
Okay.
And that's something that I've taken for life, right? If I'm able to rid myself of that pressure of that day, I'm going to be the best person that I possibly can for that particular examination. So that's something I took away from this.
Okay. That's great. So in your first attempt, how many
Yeah.
hours did you devoted to CAT preparation initially?
So I wouldn't be able to give you a set daily limit, because
Okay.
the way I prepared was I would attend the classes. I think my classes were scheduled 2 to 3 times a week, and the classes would last for 1.5 hours. So those did help me at times, but I wouldn't say that I put in any effort other than that. What I did do is I would give my mocks on regularly on weekends and then analyze them. So if Saturday I gave a mock, I'd leave Sunday for the complete analysis of the mock.
Okay.
That's how I went about it. Yeah.
Okay. That's great. So you mentioned, Vaibhav, that you were a working professional in your second attempt. So how did you manage job as well as CAT prep with that? Like, what are some of the tips that you want to give to working professional who would be attempting CAT this year?
So I'd mentioned that I picked up a job. I hadn't mentioned how long I stayed with it. I
Oh,
had
okay.
I left my job in 20 days. I didn't. I thought that I require a more business oriented mindset and work.
Hmm.
So I left my job hoping to land something better.
Okay.
I didn't at that time. So at that time, what my strategy became was to go ahead and write these Indian entrance exams. Also give GMAT parallelly.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, so had I not done well in these exams, then I would have hit the job market again. But fortunately, it worked out.
Okay.
But yeah, I have a couple of friends, and in fact, a lot of people at my campus at IIM Calcutta have prepared for CAT alongside their work, right? What I learned from them is that CAT is not an exam which is it doesn't take too much time to prepare for. You have to crack the strategy, and that plays along. So it's more about understanding yourself, tailoring yourself to what is needed, than putting in the hours of studying maths, LRDI. So it's more about cracking a strategy for the exam, not so much about learning, so to say.
What was the section that you find difficult during your preparation, and how did you improve in it?
I think what I saw a lot of variation with was my LRDI scores. I was not very consistent with it. What I mean by that is I would score around 97 to 99, sometimes a little bit higher than that also at times, but it was one section that I couldn't rely on. So and I what I tried to do was try to solve two of the easier sets out of the four sets that I received, and that did work for me because invariably two out of the four sets I was able to solve. But the challenge would come in the third set, right? So at times I could crack the set, at times I couldn't. So that's the degree of variation that I found in that section.
Okay. And the DILR section is quite unpredictable in CAT exam.
Right. Right.
So how did you prepare a syllabus for yourself, and how did you gather the resources? What were some of the resources that you were using for improving in DILR section?
So I think I have come across people who would give an entire a list of types of questions one can expect in an exam. But I would highly recommend against it because what happened in CAT 21 was all the four questions in my set, barring I think one set, was something which is completely new to the paper. And if someone enters with the mindset that they've solved all types of questions, then it's bound to hit them at that time that this is something that which we haven't prepared for. So I think it's a matter of training your mind to be okay with attempting something new at the on the exam day, right? How I prepared was to solve and try whatever came my way, be
Hmm.
it from a book by Arun Sharma, or be it some problem that appeared in CAT of 1997. Whatever came my way, I would try to solve it. I didn't keep any boundary for myself that this can come in the exam and this can't. I didn't do that. I didn't make that differentiation, and I think that does help with your mindset.
Okay. So what are some of the important topics that a student should not miss while preparing for CAT?
So, of course, if I would start with the English section, reading comprehension is something that people who are around 22, 23, maybe a little bit younger, are not used to anymore. We did that as a child till 12th grade, but there is a gap of about 5 to 6 years. So you
Hmm.
have to restart that habit of reading, understanding the crux of the passage, and then cracking it. So that's one thing. Next is, of course, coming to the mathematics section. Engineers usually have a little bit of an easier time at that, but fundamentals like algebra, which make up almost what 30 to 35%, maybe a little bit more of the paper. So understanding and rereading, revising those concepts become imperative at that time. So that is something to be done. I think I did go about reading my textbooks from ninth and 10th to revise those concepts. So
Okay.
yeah, it does help.
Okay. And some of the important topics for quants that you think are really important.
So algebra is key. That is extremely important.
Okay.
Geometry, for people who are good at it, becomes exceptionally scoring. For people who aren't that great with it, there's still about one or two sitters that you can expect in the paper. So I would recommend going through geometry. And then we have questions like time, speed, distance, which is a concept that if you pick up once, if you grasp once, then the questions become a little repetitive in nature.
Okay.
So I think these three pretty much, and a little bit about relation functions also. If you have an understanding of how equations are formed, I think that helps in algebra as well. So if you understand a little bit of graphing theory, that will help you in solving some of the questions, majorly inequalities.
Okay. So CAT toppers usually advise aspirants to take a lot of mocks and solve previous year question papers. So at point in your preparation, you started taking mocks.
So I think that is one big misconception. People tend to say that we will keep mocks for the last moment. I would advise against that. A mock paper is like a reality check of how you're doing, right? Of course, there are times that you might not be the best version of yourself in that mock, but it really helps with your mind because you give yourself the room for improvement. And more important than the mock is the analysis of the mock, understanding where you went wrong. and then retraining, rethinking about how you could improve this in the future is something which is important. So I would say that as soon as you're done with your fundamentals, maybe a block of 2 months, you can start hitting mock papers.
Okay, so you talked about the importance of mock analysis. So what was
Yeah.
the process of analyzing the mocks for you, and how many hours did you spend on it?
So I think the papers that I did in-depth analysis were the papers that I majorly flunked.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's imperative to learn from your mistakes. What I do is I'll look at the questions, of course, go through all the questions, understand where I've gone wrong. What were the easy questions? So I'd majorly focus on what were the easy questions in that section that I didn't even attempt.
Okay.
What that means is there's something wrong with what I'm choosing. So that becomes really important at that time, because if you choose eight of the eight questions, which will about, and you get a, if you have an accuracy of about 100%, 24 marks is something that will land you into 98, 99 percentile range. So it's about choosing the right question at that time and having a high accuracy. And invariably, an easy question will have a higher accuracy for yourself, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that I worked on. I used to check what are the easier questions, what are the medium difficulty questions, and what are the ones that shouldn't be attempted. So I
Okay.
try to bucket these things with my thinking, and then I would also go across what the professionals or what the gurus think, and compare my views with theirs. But yeah, I would mainly focus on revising my concept, seeing where I went wrong, and also bucketing these questions according to what I should have attempted had I attempted this paper again.
Okay, great. So people usually get demotivated when they see a low score in their mocks. How did you kept yourself motivated during that period?
I think, to be honest, I wouldn't think much of a low score.
Okay.
Um, I was confident in my ability to perform well. So a low score never bothered me. People say that a failure brings you one step closer to success. That's one way to look at it.
Okay.
But at that time, I think having such a long term view is also difficult. So it's important to you know be sad, or take away that you've not performed so well in one exam, and use that motivation to do a better job in the next mock. But the most important fact is not to lose hope. I think that is one thing that I would like to add, that it is just one mock paper, right? And if you're able to learn something from that paper, then that's the largest takeaway you could have from it.
Okay. So you gave CAT twice. What are some of the mistakes that one should avoid while preparing for CAT?
I think largely I gave myself too much pressure in the first go, because in my experience I didn't prepare at all for the second time. All my learnings from the first time carried forward. So my learnings didn't change. The way I attempted the paper actually might have been better the first time around, because I was not in touch the second time during the second attempt. So I think it's a lot about EQ,
Okay.
way more than IQ. I think your EQ plays a much larger role. So it's about developing that quotient in you of attempting a paper, not so much about how much you know. It's not JE mains, right? It's CAT.
Yeah.
CAT is just basic knowledge. More importantly, test how you're going to attempt the paper. So
Yeah.
I think that's the key.
Okay. So people who are appearing for CAT this year, what are some of the do's and don'ts, and how should they begin their preparation that you want to share with them?
So couple of people did reach out to me, and what I told them is to understand where you stand at that point. So if I were to take an example of an engineer, his strengths would probably be mathematics. So
Yeah.
he might face a little difficulty in the other two sections. Whereas a person who's coming from a strong literary background might face a little bit more of a challenge in the other two sections.
Yeah.
So for that analysis to happen, I would recommend giving an exam right away before you start your preparation, to understand where you stand. And to reduce the variability, maybe give 3 4 exams to understand, to have a more holistic view, so you can really peg yourself and understand where you need to work on and how much you should work. So I think you should start with just giving a volley of exams, understanding where you are, making an entire timeline for yourself, making a, if you require, making a day-to-day timetable for yourself, and you should chart your way from there. But it's imperative to start from ground up by giving exams right at the go to understand where you are.
Okay. So you gave XAT as well. How did
Yeah.
you find XAT different from CAT, and what was your preparation for XAT? Was it any different for CAT?
So yeah, I don't think I prepared for that. I think it's quite similar in the questions. People say that the mathematics are notch higher.
Okay.
Uh, Surprisingly, I scored quite well in my that mathematics portion, not so well in the CAT one.
Okay.
So yeah, that's all hearsay, I would say. Uh, but yeah, I mean, that is a little more unpredictable than even CAT for that matter. So especially the DM section. I would say that's a make it or break it for the examination. I know a lot of people who couldn't pass the threshold for clearing it. Um, so yeah, I think, but for a good candidate, the time duration between CAT exam and the ZAT exam is sufficient for them to prepare for it. So I wouldn't, lay so much weightage on studying for that separately
Okay.
during October, September. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, let's talk about GDPI preparation. GDPI preparation is going on right now. Lots of students are preparing for it. So, how was your preparation and what were some of the calls that you got apart from IIM Calcutta?
So if I were to talk about IIMs, I'd gotten calls from Indore and Lucknow, and of course I'm Calcutta. Barring these three, I had FMS, XLRI, and SP Gen.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. So, how did you prepare for these interviews?
I was a little perplexed as to what I should do. So I took help again. I relied on Career Launcher, something that I had experienced before. So I joined their program.
Okay.
What they started was with understanding how you are as a person. So a lot of introspection right at the beginning. And at that time, I couldn't make sense of why they're making us do that. But I realized that in all the forms, that amount of introspection is required to come up with an honest answer. And I think honesty is something that translates into you being more confident on the day of the interview because the professors have an ability to see through you. So it's exceptionally important to be completely honest during this entire period to yourself. So yeah, I would start with a lot of introspection about how my life has been. Even the most minute details at times correspond to learnings that you can't fathom at that moment. But when you think back, you realize that, oh, this is something which taught me this, which has helped me get to where I am right now. So yeah, I would go about it in that sense. And then of course, reading a lot about current affairs, brushing up on your basics, what you've done in your undergraduate. Working professionals should have complete knowledge of what requires what the company is doing, what their role is, what the future prospects for that role are. Yeah, so then you start into the habit of giving mock interviews, and with each mock you realize that there's some white gap in your preparation that you try to fulfill before the next one. So then you get into an entire cycle of mocks, which is also good. Some people prefer to not take external help. Those people, I would say, know a lot more about themselves than the average person, and it does work for them. So it's not any one set pattern that people should follow. It's highly individualistic. This period is very individualistic, right? So yeah, it's important to know who you are before even signing up for any program.
Okay, great. So, IIM Calcutta is known to conduct quite grilling interviews. How was your PI experience at IIM Calcutta?
There are professors who tend to grill you, but IIM Calcutta also has a lot of professors that do take, as we say, chill interviews. I think where it gets a little uncomfortable for aspirants is the fact that every IIM Calcutta interview starts with mathematics. So that's a given. But the degree of those maths questions vary. So even when I was reading transcripts, I would see sometimes they're asking a little more than basic level questions, and then sometimes they'll ask very rudimentary things.
Okay.
What we need to understand at that point is that they might not be even checking your mathematical knowledge by posing a very difficult question to you. They're trying to check how strong your mental makeup is. If you're not able to answer one question, they're checking how that affects the next series of questions coming your way. So I wouldn't call it grilling interviews. I would say that that kind of interview would depend on the perspective of the professor, what he's trying to gauge from his end. So a stressful interview is an interview where the professor or the interviewer has extracted the most information from you as a person. And I would say it's an accurate description of how you'd perform in a job, which is also going to be a high pressure environment. At that time also, it's one area where you have to be honest to yourself, because if you come up with some facade, that's going to break down as soon as a stressful interview starts. So like I said, with introspection, if you're honest with your answers, I don't think that amount of stress should get to you at that moment.
Okay, that's great. So, what were some of the key learnings from your GDPI process that you would want to share with the students?
Um, like I think I've can't emphasize enough on the fact that you have to remain honest throughout. I was exceptionally honest. There were ups and downs in my career
Okay.
this far, and I mentioned that pretty clearly. At the same time, you have to be smart enough knowing on how to chart an interview.
Okay.
That starts from the introduction. But there are times that the professor or the interviewers are not going to be interested in taking your introduction. So you have to be prepared for that, that degree of uncertainty. Just know yourself, know what you want to do, why you want to pursue an MBA, why do you want to go to one particular college, brush up with your fundamentals, and I think that should work for you. It's not very this process is not too harsh, I would say. Once you've cleared CAT with a decent percentile, people who do undergo this process have a fair chance of making into great colleges.
Oh, great. So you got calls from a lot of other great colleges. What made you choose IIM Calcutta as your final selection for the B school? And what are some of the key factors that one should keep in mind while selecting their B school?
So in my case, fortunately, I was able to convert all of the calls that I had had. Why it was sort of a no-brainer for me was because what I want from an MBA is credibility.
Yeah.
And IIM Calcutta is one such institute that would give me maximum credibility. I didn't have calls from Ahmedabad and Bangalore. Had I had that, then I would have maybe taken some more time to decide, and my choice it could have been different. I don't know. So the credibility that is attached to my name is something that I looked when I was choosing my college. What students also tend to do is they tend to go by the placement reports and judge by their fitment of their profiles, what their interests are, which is fair. I think that's a mature way of looking at it. Um, but I would say that understanding that in MBA is also about learning is very important. It's not just a placement agency. So going through the courses, how they're taught, the elective subjects in the second year also become imperative in your decision. So that's something that should be looked into. People do tend to overlook it at that time, at that juncture. But if I were to advise students, I would say that go through the courses as well and then judge your alignment with the institute.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about profile building. How
Yeah.
much important do you think profile building is in B school admissions?
There are a couple of ways one has built their profile before entering a B school. That is, of course, some things you can't change are your 10th, 12th marks, your undergraduation college, your marks at that college, what you've done up until the point you're entering into a B school, and of course, your work ex. But what people don't realize that once you enter a B school, the horizon of opportunity just widens by a great degree. So even while you're in a B school, you can really improve on your profile and really build on your profile. So those are some of the opportunities that one should look forward to. For example, there are umpteen number of case competitions, branded case competitions that come to good institutes. That's one way. Second, a lot of people from my college, me included, try to give CFA L1, L2 parallelly. That's another way of going about it. Picking up responsibilities within the institute that are for welfare collectively is another great way of profile building. So the opportunity one gets once we're inside a B school is also immense. So we can't discount that. So a person who's entering a B school with, so like myself, I didn't have a great profile, but I do see a lot of opportunity for myself to improve the my profile over here. So I am gearing towards that.
Okay. So before entering a B school, how do you think a fresher can work on their profile?
I always have this habit of breaking down any problem into a set of capabilities and motivation. A fresher entering a B school might lack some of the capabilities required at the time of MBA, something that he might not possess when contrasted with a person who has worked and a well seasoned person who's worked in an organization for 2 years with relevant work ex. But at that time, what you have is a high level of motivation. So that motivation should compensate for any other lack in your profile. And that motivation should also help you build your profile later on. The question you have asked is mainly going to be assessed by freshers after they've written CAT. But of course, up until that point, the damage has been done, right? If you've not scored well in your 10th, 12th undergrad, you can't repair that. So little to no scope at that time. If the person was to read this when they're just crossing 12th, then you have the entire 4 years of your undergrad ahead of you. And I can't stress enough of how much importance undergraduate marks are. So yeah, so it depends on the juncture one is at, of how much you can still vary with your profile. But yeah, if you're done with some stuff, you can't repair it, right? Then make the most of the future.
Okay. All right, great. So, how was the summer placement season in IIM Calcutta this year? And what were some of the companies that were coming, and what were some of the domains and profiles that were most sought after by students?
IIM Calcutta that way is quite lucky. We've always had good placements, and even when the market has been bad, we have been not too affected. I mean, there were some changes with our placements, but relative to the market condition, I think we've done well.
Okay.
Um, we have seen interest throughout the years this time too from finance firms that deal in IB, VC, and all. Then, of course, one very interesting sector that attracts a lot of majority of students is consulting.
Yeah.
Further, that's broken down into management consulting, strategy consulting, specialized consulting. And then, as we tend to move to other domains, we have great representation in marketing, gen man roles as well. And then sometimes few startups also try and pick up students from our college.
Okay. All right. Let's talk a little bit about your campus life at Joka. So, today, startup culture is booming. So,
Yeah.
how do you find the curriculum at IIM Calcutta industry relevant?
The first year courses at IIM Calcutta are about building up fundamentals for the business. While they might not gear you towards, push you towards entrepreneurship, but what they ensure is that they will build a foundation for you to start a business later on in life. For you to work in a startup, it's imperative to at least know the entire know-how of a market. And that is something this helps in. I wouldn't say that our curriculum is so evolved to directly incorporate learnings from entrepreneurship yet.
Okay.
A few electives in my second year, which I'm not too aware of at this point, might be a little more relevant in case of startups and entrepreneurship. But yeah, I think the first year is imperative in learning because everyone comes from very diverse backgrounds. But at the end of the first year, what they want is for everyone to have a very level understanding of what an MBA is and what the basic barometer is for understanding of business. So that's something that is fundamental and it should be done. And so we cover courses from accounting to microeconomics to macroeconomics to organizational behavior to HR perspective. So there's an interplay of every business aspect, which I think really gears one towards entering or making a startup because these are fundamentals of any business.
Yeah. Okay, great. So IIM Calcutta is known for finance. Is
Yeah.
finance that is something that has interested you as well? Is it one of your career choices for the future?
Right. So yeah, we are known as a Fin campus.
Mm.
Right. Lately, we have seen a lot of interest from consulting companies as well, and things have changed in the past.
Okay.
But yeah, there are a few great firms that have come for IIM Calcutta as legacy recruiters and continue to do so. For me personally, I was someone who was quite detached from finance. I had no relevance, or I hadn't even even studied finance before. But like I said, with the first term course of accounting that I had, I developed my interest in finance. Luckily, landed myself a summer placement with FinIQ, which is a Singapore-based firm, which deals with an intersection of product management and finance. I think that really sparked an interest for me, and from there, I decided to even give CFA, which I will be doing this August. So yeah, I think I see myself heading that way.
Okay. Okay, so what are some of the factors that a student who is entering IIM Calcutta can expect from it?
So I think IIM Calcutta is one such place that you get to decide how much you want to make of it.
Oh,
Because the opportunities here are immense. What really matters is how you're able to, create and manage trade-offs between personal life, academics, extracurriculars, and then also professional life. When I talk about professional, I meant your career. So your
mm,
summer placements, your final placements. So it's completely based on how you want to manage your life at IIM Calcutta because the opportunities here are immense. The campus is very vibrant, a lot of clubs, lot of sports facilities. So that way you get a very holistic understanding of what could be done, but not so much what should be done. That's up to you.
So let's come to some lighter question. How
Yeah.
is your campus life at IIM Calcutta, and what are some of the things that you guys do to get away with the stress and hustle of the MBA life?
So, like I said, right, a campus life is something that is very different for different people. So I usually when I want to take a break, I would step out towards Park Street, which is the place to be in Kolkata,
Okay.
with my friends for a good meal or for a movie. But when our courses get over about 4 p.m., a lot of people are headed towards sports, towards gym.
Okay.
So that's some of the ways that people burn off steam over here, blow off steam. But yeah, completely differs. I'm a little bit of an introvert, so I don't socialize much. But yeah, there are a couple of events that take place on a regular basis that people do tend to socialize as well.
Okay. How do you think, how much important is networking during MBA?
So networking can be looked at from two perspectives. It can looked at from a perspective where you're actually micro learning from a person you're interacting with. That's something that I like to do because I feel that every person comes from a very different, diverse background, and learning from someone is something that I have always done, and I think it gives me one step. I gain some knowledge from every person I meet. The other way of looking at it is from a career aspect. Building connections during these 2 years is something which will reap benefits later down the line. And for that, while Indian MBA college in general might not provide opportunity directly, but one could utilize the brand name to extract opportunities. So that's something that is done.
Okay, all right. So before we end, how would you like to describe your journey from preparing for CAT and then entering IIM Calcutta?
One thing that I would like to stress is at times we try to create goals in our head that we think are not attainable.
Okay.
Um, I think I heard some guru talk over YouTube that you should let an IIM reject you. You should not yourself reject yourself for an IIM.
Yeah.
So that I think is a great takeaway that you give it your best shot. You might be for it, it might not be meant for you, you don't know, but you give it your best shot and let things take their way.
Yeah. That's really nice.
That's how I rode my journey. So that's what I would like to say.
Okay, okay, all right. This was a great session. I'm sure a lot of students will find your journey very inspiring and they'll learn a lot from the insights that you shared. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you had a great session and I hope you have a great MBA life ahead at IIM Calcutta. Best of luck for the future. Thank you so much for
Thank you so
joining.
much.
We hope you find this session of MBA Talks helpful. We'll be coming up with a lot more such videos. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Career 360.